So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I see that both Commissioner Weatherall and Commissioner Wilkins are on, so there is a quorum present. I did, before we jump into the agenda, just want to double check on who all is on the platform. I can see Pat Shannon, Teresa's obviously on there from our staff, Catherine Greiner, Dewey Kennedy, Mary Reeser, Ann Mitchell, Mary Dyer, but I've got a couple others I just wanted to check in and see if you could identify yourselves. I see Jared.
This is Jared Cole with AFSCME.
Okay. And then Ned, can you identify yourself, please? Not hearing you. Looks like you're unmuted. And folks, you can, if you're on the phone, you can press *6. That'll unmute you. I see Kelly Smith joined us. Ned, can you identify yourself, please? Maybe not. How about let's go with the phone number, last 4 digits ending in 5717.
That's the road department number.
Oh, okay, that's Dewey. Good to know. And let me see who else we've got in here. How about phone number ending in 2511? If you push *6, you'll be able to speak. We got a lot of shy people. How about 2403? If you push *6, you'll be unmuted. We're struggling here. Then we have one more that's just call-in user. So if I haven't asked for your number, if you could just unmute and let us know who's on the line, that would be awesome. Okay, guys, I'll give it one more try. If 2511, could you just unmute yourself real quick and identify yourself? Just want to know who's on the line. Okay, how about 2403?
So everyone, we're trying to be inclusive here and make sure that everybody gets a chance to communicate with us if they'd like to. And that's our reasoning behind asking people to identify themselves so that we can be aware of who's in our meeting in case we have questions for those in our audience.
Anybody? Okay. Well, I guess we can move forward. If folks figure out how to unmute, though, please identify yourself so we can make you part of the conversation. Let's go into 2.0, which is additions and revisions to the agenda. Any additions or revisions? Nothing from, I see head shakes. Okay. Let's move into 3.0, which is correspondence and public comments. Start with public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand. So for those who are on the Zoom platform, there's a little thing that pops up on your right-hand side if you push participants, and you can raise your hand there. You can also just jump in too. For those who are on the phone, if you just push *6, that'll unmute your phone. and just jump in if you would like to leave a public comment. Anybody want to make a public comment at this point? You can do so throughout the meeting as well. Okay, if not, let's move on to correspondence. We did receive a letter from the Diocese of Baker. This is from Bishop Liam Carey, and basically just requesting of the court. It's a pretty long letter, and so it'll just, for those who are interested in reading it, it'll be part of the court packet. But basically just asking that houses of worship, that we request of the governor that houses of worship be part of the initial reopening. So anyway, I wanted to just flag that as we're talking about starting to reopen for COVID-19, that this had been a request that came in. We've also, since posting this, have gotten some feedback from some of our constituents locally who actually disagree with this request, and specifically because they fear, particularly because some of our congregations tend to have some of the higher risk populations, that they raise some concerns about reopening houses of worship too early and potentially exposing some of our more vulnerable community members. So just wanted to make sure that that was put on the record, and for folks who want to read the full letter, it's posted to the county's website. Let's move into consent agenda.
You're still muted. I move we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second. I do that because my dogs are loud sometimes. I have a puppy.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of April 22nd regular meeting minutes and consider approval of a revised fiscal year 2020-2021 budget calendar. Is there further discussion?
No.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we'll move right on into unfinished business. 5.1 is the Cedar Springs Lane relocation project update. And as you're all aware, during our last meeting, Roadmaster Kennedy was here. He's on the phone as well today, and sort of just put on the table this idea that one of the ways we may be able to alleviate the waiting times at the railroad crossing near the waste management site would be to look at relocating Cedar Springs Lane and having it sort of run parallel to the tracks for the 4 miles until it clears the tracks, and then coming back into the existing road. And so obviously there were a number of questions since we had just heard about, well, the commissioners had just heard about it during the last meeting, a number of questions that I think folks had. And so one, I just wanted to make sure that I'm keeping this on the agenda so that we're, it doesn't fall off. But number two, in the meanwhile, since our last meeting, Lisa our chief of staff has worked with our assessor and our planning director to kind of map out all of the pre-construction and post-construction steps that we would need to go through. Just trying to get our heads around what this project would look like and timeline and all those kinds of things. So that's included in your packet, mostly as an FYI, because obviously we're not going to do pre-construction until we decide that we want to go forward and we, we want to actually do it. But I wanted to put that out there so it's part of the record as well, that, this is going to be, as you might expect, it's not just as simple as saying we're going to put in a road and let's start tomorrow. So I wanted you guys to be able to see that so that, we're clear on all of the processes we would have to go through. Obviously, there's planning related to that. There would be some land transactions that would have to take place. And I'm hoping this will also give an opportunity, if there's things that we're missing from this list, to surface those with Lisa so it can be added into the project plan, and we make sure that we don't miss any steps should the court decide to move forward with approving the project. The other piece of this, and I think it's the big kind of the sticky piece of it, is figuring out what the cost share on the project is going to be. So I had a conversation with Dave Lowe and Leah Shannon, and John Borghese on Monday afternoon to try to move that conversation forward just a little bit. I will say that there is, as you might expect, given the economic climate that we're in right now, Waste Management, I think, would not be in a position to cut a large check for the project up front. I mean, they obviously have some concerns. Tonnage is down right now. We don't know what reopening, even once things are reopened, how quickly the economy will recover and people will start, you know, building new buildings and tearing down old ones and all those kinds of things. So, so I think there's some hesitancy on their part in terms of writing a big check. So one of the things that I threw out there, and I wanted to get your feedback on, commissioners, is this idea of, rather than asking for a lump sum for their portion of the payment, what if we tried to structure, basically the county would front the money, but that we would use the existing road agreement that we have in place to recoup the money over a period of time. So whether that's the current 3 cents per ton that we would be looking at, or whether we would be asking for a temporary bump, you know, over a period of time, you know, whether that's 1 cent or 2 cents or whatever we determined in order to meet sort of the payback schedule that we would like to see, and then just recoup that cost through that existing contract, rather than set up an entire different mechanism for having those payments come through. So I know I'm just throwing this at you for the first time, and so you might want to take some time to think about it, but I wanted to get a sense of if that approach would be something that you guys would be open to.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, sorry, Jerry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's an interesting idea. It's a way that that their portion could be covered, but like you said, not in such a, you know, big check up front fashion.
Yeah, we've been hearing some feedback. I know that some other on the commission have been had communication from some people. We have those that are directly affected by the delays on the Cedar Springs Lane at this time, are very in favor of this relocating of Cedar Springs Lane. I've also had people comment to me that the commission needs to step up and require the rail line to actually free up that those crossings. So we're hearing all kinds of different type of feedback. I've also had someone suggest that the host fees are a part of what could be used to create the new road, which is something that I guess part of the agreement with Waste Management and the county. So we're getting lots of feedback. I'd like to hear more.
Okay.
Make these decisions and see where we need to go.
And so folks have, oh, go ahead, Leslie.
I've gotten feedback too. Mine has been about 75% against the county building a road. And then 25% has been very in favor of us doing something. So that's kind of what I'm hearing from people. And I would really like to hear anybody's thoughts on it as well.
So the people who are against it, what was identified as their concerns about it?
Well, I think one concern that I've been thinking about as well is just with the economic climate right now and due to COVID, if this is and this is what I'm hearing from people, if this is the right time to take on a $1.9 million project, and also looking forward to what's going to happen with the road department based on state funding, you know, because we're not really sure what's going to happen with that and if we'll have to make cuts due to that. But then, like I said, I have other people that have approached me that have said, yes, we need to do this and we need to try to find ways to make it happen.
Okay. I mean, because I think I definitely can hear the funding piece of it. You know, it seems though, and maybe this is something, Dewey, I don't know if you have some thoughts on impact to the road department, and but my hope would be that if it's something that, if it's just a financial situation, there may be some ways to make that still work. If the idea itself, people like the idea, you know, I mean, that it's two separate issues, I think, is what I'm saying, is that the finances, I think we have some flexibility because we have some funding sources that are very stable right now that we may not have in the future. For instance, SIP funds that will roll off that, you know, down the road, we won't have that kind of money laying around where we have it right now. But I am curious, and maybe that's something that Dewey can consider and maybe give us some feedback on his take on that. But
there was another issue from some people that were involved in the initial siting of the landfill so many years ago, that there could be some environmental issues of why we would not be able to site that road in that location. So that's something else that I'd like to have us look into as well before we go too much farther in making any type of decision. Because if we get blocked by that, we don't want to have invested money in something that we can't go forward with.
Sherry, I heard that as well from my husband. He said he just remembered at one point in time they tried to do some work over there, and he couldn't remember if it was something about a protected plant or if it was Oregon Trail related. But I talked with Lisa quite a bit the other day trying to get some questions. And by the way, I really appreciated your pre and post construction plan. I thought that was very well done and detailed. But you know, also she brought up floodplain considerations. So that was one of my questions too, is how do we go about getting some of those questions answered before we get too far into this?
So if I could just speak a little bit to that. So staff, namely planning director, has already been looking into that. With regards to the Oregon Trail, it seems like it's not a slam dunk either way. There's definitely room to navigate and negotiate how we could make this work. So the fact the Oregon Trail is there, the current road does already go over some of it. I think if we do our due diligence and take the appropriate steps, we'd still be able to move forward with maybe some minor modifications to the plan. The protected vegetation piece we're still looking into, so we'll let you know more about that as we find out.
Thank you, Lisa.
so the other question that that would be helpful, that I could maybe use some direction from you all on, is the percentage of cost sharing, and just a general sense from you. Our road agreement, our existing road agreement, basically is an 80-20 split. 80% for waste management, 20% for the county. And so it would be helpful, as I'm having these conversations, and Dewey and I are working on the figures and going back and forth with waste management, to get a sense from the commissioners on, is that what, I mean, say all of these other things are resolved, you know, the issue with the floral and the Oregon Trail and all of those kinds of things. If we decided to move forward, what is that cost share? What's the ideal cost share that we're looking for? Would we like to try to have that 80-20 split? Do you have a sense of how you would like? It would be helpful for me in talking with Dave to have some sense of where those numbers are that you would like to see.
They'd have to pay 80% of the cost of the road. They're not going to do that. I don't see waste management wanting to pay 80% of the cost of a new road. So I'm pretty sure that's not going to fly.
I've talked with Dewey a little bit about that, about what the appropriate cost share plan is, and there's money available already, correct? I mean, there's been money that Waste Management has already, that we have already. Is it like 300? I've heard numbers around 300,000 that's maybe available to use towards that.
Yeah, so there's about 300,000 that is, keep in mind there's two different funding sources that are coming in. So there's the one that's related to the solid waste agreement, and that one is about 300,000. And then Kim Waste, that side is 50,000 a year. So there's, you know, assuming obviously if we move forward, this probably wouldn't be built until the next fiscal year anyway, that there would be that additional 50,000 from the Kim Waste side coming in, and then whatever's accumulated, you know, through the 3 cents a ton on the solid waste side would also, those are automatically would come in, and this would fit right in with that original agreement. So
I had one of the people that spoke with me had asked the question about how much money there was available and what we did with leftover money from year to year. And I did talk to Dewey a little bit about that the other day, and he can jump in if he has anything to add. But it sounds like the Kim Waste money, the 50,000 that comes every year, he indicated that gets used every year.
yeah, I think
Also, that there was also like 300-some thousand available that hadn't been used towards this road maintenance.
mm-hmm.
I have a question for Dewey as well. Dewey, if there is the $300,000 in the coffers now, isn't that designated to for the maintenance of the current Cedar Springs Road? Don't we need to do some maintenance right now or in the near future if we aren't building a new road, or if the new road isn't built within, you know, the next 12 months? Doesn't that road need repair?
Dewey, I think you might be muted. Oh, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead, Dewey.
Yes, there is some repairs that need to be made. We were planning on doing the overlay project this year while Kerr Construction was there doing the freeway, but because of the coronavirus and the economic impact to Waste Management, they decided they didn't want to do their additional monies on top of the 303,000 that is in the bank right now. They opted to wait another year. The 50,000 that we get every year from Kim Waste, it goes for the actual patching, maintenance, striping, snow plowing, and sanding of Cedar Springs. That's what that money goes to every year. I budget that in to do all of that work. The big pot of money is to be used for the overlay project. So, and then the estimate that I got from Kerr, because Waste Management decided not to take advantage of the opportunity we had this year, would probably be at least a 50% increase over their estimate if we were to do it next year, because of having to mob in and everything. So it'll be quite a bit more expensive when and if we do decide to do the overlay.
But that was Waste Management's choice, and since they're paying 80% of that, then
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, their increase to that was like 300, and they had to add another $390,000 to that 303 to pay their 80% of the cost estimate to do the project.
Okay. Thank you, Dewey.
And they were worried about not having that money at the end of this budget year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of next steps, where would you like me to go with this? Do you want me to continue crunching the numbers? And I mean, one of the things we could look at, I would need to go back and see historically how much came in, you know, on the solid waste roadside to see how much historically. But I mean, we could potentially run some numbers just so you could see what a payoff using that mechanism would look like, if that would be helpful. Waste definitely seemed more open to that approach, but the detail is definitely going to matter in terms of what those percentages are, you know, the cost share percentage. So I don't know if you want us to look at maybe running a couple of different scenarios as far as, you know, if it was an 80-20 split, a 70-30 split, just so you can see, and then run that next to what historically we've received every year, so you could see what the payoff would look like. Would that be helpful for us in terms of a next step to try to put the finances on paper?
That would be helpful for me.
Yes, definitely. Did you have something, Dewey? I see you lit up there for a second.
No, I don't. I just moved. I'm waiting for Teresa to mute me again.
Okay, so I think for next steps then, we'll continue to do the due diligence that Lisa talked about at the beginning, just running down, you know, Oregon Trail stuff and any other potential problems that may not even allow us to move forward with construction, try to get that ironed out before we get too far down the road. And then from my follow-up, we can work on running some numbers through some different scenarios just so that we can kind of dig in a little bit more and see if there's a preferable one that we could maybe use as a starting point for negotiations with Waste to see if they are still interested in moving forward. That sound workable?
Yes, it does. Has this proposal completely taken waste management out of the negotiations with the short line crew, Watco, about trying to be better citizens and opening up those crossings and not blocking as much?
I don't know what kinds of conversations they're having with Watco. So I did not get the sense that they, I think that probably the folks that are closest to this think that the road is a good thing. So the people on the ground, I would say, and the ones that are further away from Arlington, I think are still failing to see the community significance to blocking the road for as long as they are. So I think we would still have some work to do in convincing some of the management, the higher management, not the local management, but the higher management, that this is something they need to be working on, even beyond the road.
Thank you.
Any other thing, anything else on this topic for now? And we'll come back as we put together more information. We'll get it back on the agenda later this spring, early summer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to award bid 5.2, award bid for Lone Rock Bridge replacement project. So as you see in your packet, the RFP for the Lone Rock Bridge replacement project was out, and bids came back on April 29th. There were 5 bids received, which are detailed in your packet. A low bidder for the project is Waldron and Sons Incorporated, which came in at $882,477.04. The total bid amount was actually lower than Anderson Perry's, which is the project engineer's estimate of $918,000. Anderson Perry reviewed the State of Oregon Contractors Board website. It appears the license held by Waldron and Sons is in good standing. They see no reason why the company would is not qualified to perform the work. And so the recommendation from our roadmaster is that we award the bid to the lowest bidder. And I don't know, Dewey, if you want to add anything to that?
No, I actually spoke with Jaden. He said that everything cleared as far as Waldron and Sons were concerned. And I actually got a phone call from the owner of the company yesterday saying he's excited about the job. And as soon as he gets this notice of award signature in, he's going to start ordering materials and mobilizing equipment and stuff down there. So as soon as Fish and Wildlife and Division of State Lands gives him the okay, which if the creek dries early, they will be able to start early. He's going to be ready to go to work. And
Dewey, how long is the project?
They're estimating a 2 to 2.5 month process to demolish the old bridge and erect the new one and do the I guess the restoration of the creek and matching the road grades up. So it's going to be a fairly fast process. The in-water work window is very short for that area. I think they have to be out by September 30th, which is, you know, that doesn't give them much time.
Right. Any questions for Dewey, commissioners?
I don't think so. I think he answered the questions I did have. He's good with this firm and seems to be positive, so.
Great. Do we have a motion?
I move to issue a notice of intent to award the contract for the Lone Rock Bridge Replacement Project to Waldron and Sons, Inc., per their bid dated April 29, 2020, in the amount of $882,477.04. The intent to award will become an award of the contract on May 13th, 2020, contingent on no challenges to the intent to award being received by the county prior to May 13th, 2020.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we issue a notice of intent to award the contract for the Lone Rock Bridge Replacement Project to Waldron and Sons Incorporated per their bid dated April 29th, 2020 in the amount of $882,477.04. The intent to award will become an award of the contract on May 13th, 2020, contingent on no challenges to the intent to award being received by the county prior to May 13th, 2020. Is there further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to 5.3, Fiber Council update. Just wanted to, this is just my ongoing, anytime the Fiber Council meets, giving you guys an update on what we're up to. The Fiber Council met a couple weeks ago now, and basically we're still moving forward on trying to identify and work with folks who would like to access the fiber line. So we have a draft fiber agreement that our telecom attorney, Christy Monson, helped put together. And so basically we're just doing as much outreach as we can to people who are already providing service in the Condon area and those who might be interested in the future. Obviously with COVID-19, I think a lot of the business decision making has been kind of put on hold. So we haven't had anybody say, yes, I'm ready to sign kind of thing, but I'm hoping that here, once things start opening up and people start shifting back into the new normal, that we'll have more takers. One of the things that I did want to sort of flag for you guys, I guess, is obviously with COVID-19 and the requirement that people need to work from home if they can, do their telehealth, you know, from home, learn from home, teach from home, all of those kinds of things. I think what we've seen is how important that divide between people who live, especially right now, in town and out of town is. If you're out of town, it's, you know, we've gotten a lot of feedback from teachers who are blowing through their, you know, their satellite data in a day kind of thing while their kids are trying to stream their lessons and they're trying to teach. And so what that has done is sort of rekindled a discussion with Columbia Basin and some potential other partners about maybe coming up with a strategy for deploying more reliable internet, whether that's wireless or fiber, outside of city limits. And because the other thing that we have been hearing some rumblings about is that Congress will likely, as we go to try to restart the economy, there may be some stimulus dollars that are coming out where they're looking for sort of shovel-ready projects that they can put in some money behind and put people back to work. And so, you know, I think our little Fiber Council group was starting to think that maybe if we could get ahead of the game, put together a strategy for deploying fiber outside of or high speed, you know, through a wireless system, whatever makes the most sense financially to do, that it would behoove us to put together that plan should the federal government start opening up more funds for these kinds of shovel-ready projects. And then we could not only potentially be putting people locally back to work more quickly, but also resolving a need that clearly has been shown, especially with the COVID pandemic, that we need that kind of accessibility in rural Oregon and especially in our county. So I just wanted to get a sense from you. I want to make sure I'm not off base, but I would like, if you guys are open to it, to be able to continue discussing with Columbia Basin and other partners about putting together a strategy for outside of the city limits, how to help with accessibility and start crafting that so that should federal funds open up, we'd be in a position to go compete for those federal grants.
Sorry.
Hi, Leslie. Even if those federal grants don't come in, looks like you're up. Go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
Okay. Even if those federal grants don't go in, it's such a need in our rural community that I think we just need to continue to pursue it and maybe designate, you know, what are our dollars that can go to help our rural residents. It's a big problem. It's huge.
I also think that having something in place for when these federal dollars become available would be a wonderful idea, because we have found out that they disappear quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And what we've been hearing from our federal partners is that we are anticipating, although who knows what Congress will do, but we are anticipating that when additional stimulus dollars will come through, that Congress will be trying to funnel that through existing programs. So rather than recreate and create a bunch of bureaucracy to try to shove money out, they're going to try to funnel it through. So that's why I was thinking fiber in particular, because they have reconnect grants that are pre-existing, that if they tweaked some of those requirements just a little bit, they could open up a lot of investment for counties that have been shut out previously, because we've had some city centers that have fast enough speeds that it kicks us out of the eligibility pool. So
yeah, we need to
you guys
stay right
go
on
ahead,
top
Sherry.
of it. We need to stay right on top of it and make sure that we're first in line.
Okay. So I will keep pushing that forward then, and I'll just keep updating you guys on any significant progress that we make, if that works for you guys.
Definitely.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's move on to 5.4, consider approval of resolution number R 2020-14, a resolution extending a declared state of emergency in Gilliam County. So this is mostly just a housekeeping thing. I want for folks on the phone to understand that the resolution is extending this sort of indefinitely right now, with the idea that the county court will come back and rescind when it's appropriate. But for folks listening and wondering why we're doing this while we're also talking about reopening on the same day, the real reason is that the state of emergency declaration is necessary in order for the county to recoup FEMA costs. So FEMA will reimburse us for some of those costs, but only when we're under a state of emergency. So we need to keep that open because we are still incurring costs through our senior services and other programs. You know, our emergency management, all of those functions are still incurring costs. And so this extension just allows, Lisa is taking the lead on making those requests for reimbursement from FEMA. And so this is really just more of a housekeeping thing to ensure that we're able to access those federal reimbursement dollars. Any questions?
I don't have any.
No.
Okay.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2020-14 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2020-14 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We'll move into new business now. 6.1, which is discuss modification of Tumbleweed Tournament Special Project Grant Award. So this is mostly housekeeping as well. As you know, the Tumbleweed Tournament takes place every March here in Condon. We awarded a special projects grant for the tournament for the current fiscal year, which the tournament that was to be held in March. Obviously, it was canceled in response to COVID-19, and so the tournament organizer, Joe Colby, had just reached out and wanted to know how we wanted them to handle the funds. So he reached out to the treasurer's office. So far, the only expense that they incurred out of that grant, those grant funds, were just to purchase some t-shirts, and they purchased the t-shirts they purchased could be reused for next year's tournament. So they'll just hold those t-shirts for next year. So Kelly took the original request, and so she had suggested two options in your briefing. One would be to ask them to return the funds, which would require them to apply for a new special projects grant. The deadline's coming up here on the 14th. And the second would be just to modify and extend the current grant agreement by a year so that they could use it for next year's tournament instead. And so just based on, you know, the administration side of things for the recipient, I think we're just recommending that we just go ahead and modify that grant agreement by a year. This is an annual event that's been taking place for decades now. So, you know, and it's clearly something the community supports and wants to continue happening, and that will allow them then to not have to submit to return the funds and us figure out how we're going to receive it and budget it and all that kind of stuff. This way they can just keep the money for an extra year and spend it for next year's tournament.
Yes.
Questions about that?
I do not have any.
I don't either. I think it makes sense just to let them carry it over.
Right.
I thought so too.
I would move to amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 Special Projects Grant Award to the Condon School District for the Tumbleweed Tournament by extending the deadline for expending the grant funds to June 30th, 2021, and to authorize the county judge to prepare and execute an amended grant agreement reflecting the same.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 Special Projects Grant Award to the Condon School District for the Tumbleweed Tournament by extending the deadline for expending the grant funds to June 30th, 2021, and to authorize the county judge to prepare and execute an amended grant agreement reflecting the same. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, moving on to 6.2, consider approval of resolution number R 2020-13, a resolution declaring county vehicle as surplus equipment. So this request is coming to us from the Family Services Department. There's a 2009 Chevy Tahoe. The vehicle is used for the OICC crew primarily. And the safety committee has identified some safety concerns with the vehicle and recommended that it either be repaired or replaced. The vehicle has a little over 200,000 miles on it. It served its useful life to Gilliam County. The safety concern is there's no door panels on the inside of the back doors, which makes it difficult to open them if somebody has to exit quickly. There's also not enough seating right now in that vehicle to carry the full crew and the leader at the same time. So, so based on those, the recommendation from Teddy was that we go ahead and declare it surplus, that we dispose of it via the online public auction site, publicsurplus.com, with a minimum bid of $800.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
How has that online, so how has it been working? Because I know we've done a couple of them recently.
The public surplus.
Yeah, I have not checked. I think the last one we did was, or authorized, was one of the transportation vehicles. I have not checked in with Marla to see how that went. And if I recall, it was maybe right before COVID-19, so it may not have even been done yet. It may just still be sitting there. I know Gary has used it previously for some other vehicles, and I think he's been very pleased with the results. It just, putting it online sort of gives you a different audience, you know, a wider audience. And the other feedback we've gotten from even locals is that it helps to be able to, rather than guess what the bid might be and miss out if you really want it, it allows them to kind of watch the bid as it goes. And if they really want it, to continue bidding, you know, higher basically to get the vehicle. So the feedback that we have had has been pretty good, I think.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2020-13, declaring the 2009 Chevrolet Tahoe as surplus equipment and directing the vehicle be disposed of via online auction with a minimum bid of $800.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution R 2020-13, declaring the 2009 Chevrolet Tahoe as surplus equipment and directing the vehicle be disposed of via online auction with a minimum bid of $800. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, moving on to 6.3, discuss in-house economic development structure. So as a recap, during our meeting on April 22nd, the county court received a letter from the city of Condon, you guys will recall, requesting an opportunity to work directly with us on future economic development projects. And so as follow-up to that request, you guys had directed me to put together an initial staffing structure to look at what economic development in-house would look like for the county. I will say that I think part of this, some of the roles and responsibilities of our local entities have been a little less than clear over the years, I think is safe to say. I know the port, and I see Peter's on there at times, has said that it is the county's economic development agency. We have done a thorough review of our documents that we have internally. We have not turned up any documentation that the county courts previously have ever formally delegated that to them. So, so anyway, I wanted to put that on the record. And so basically what we've seen from time to time, and I've experienced it since I came into office, is that the judges historically have really kind of served as the point person on big economic development projects. I think that's partly as a product of, it's typically the county court that's funding those projects. And so it's hard to involve the county in anything that requires some expenditures from county resources without having the judge typically be part of that conversation. And so it's not uncommon when there's somebody in the community that has an idea that I don't get a call and somebody's asking for a meeting to talk about whether it's housing or fiber or whatever idea somebody has that they'd like to, the county to consider. So based on that, you know, my recommendation is as follows. Basically, you know, I, as the county judge, would be serving as the economic development officer for the county, which to me just means that I would continue to serve sort of as that first meeting, first point of contact, the person who's really overseeing the county's involvement in economic development, which is what happens anyway when the county is funding a major project. That comes through this office, as you guys know, typically anyway, as a function of this job. And then in terms of support, the idea would be to use our existing county court staff. So we wouldn't be talking about making new hires. The chief of staff and the administrative assistant would then support me in that role. So we'd be looking at the chief of staff would help provide some coordinating, you know, so if there's multiple staff members that are involved, if planning's involved and development, and Teresa here as administrative assistant, that Lisa would help sort of coordinate that, keep on track. I mean, we're already seeing her do that right now with the road project we're talking about, just kind of running down different pieces of things that different staff members can help research. And then also just serving as a thought partner with me, which is something that she does naturally anyway, when we've got an idea that we're kicking around, you know, asking questions and saying, what about this, and those sorts of things. And then the administrative assistant, obviously Teresa, will continue to facilitate when those decisions need to come before the court and we're making funding decisions, things like that. I don't anticipate there would be a huge change to her job. We're just talking about the normal functions that she does, you know, filing, keeping track of deadlines, you know, following up with the county court members, making sure everybody's got their briefings, all those sorts of things. And then the other piece would be looking at the community development coordinator role and really structuring that to be more of a support, both to economic development and to community development. So sort of merging those two functions together and really help providing additional research capacity, additional administrative support to help bring those projects into fruition. So that's sort of the top line sort of outline. If the county court decided to move forward with this sort of a framework, next steps would be taking a look at the current position descriptions for the chief of staff and for the administrative assistant, the county court administrative assistant, to see if there's anything we need to refine to make sure that those responsibilities fit. And then looking at reclassifying the community development coordinator to fit that administrative support role that we're talking about. And then also just notifying the Port of Arlington that this is our intent, so that we're clear going forward what those roles look like. So that's my overview. Questions or initial thoughts?
As far as the reclassifying the community development coordinator position, if we agreed that this is the way we want to go, how soon would that take place and that position come back online?
So that's a good question. I think the first step would be to actually look at a job description and getting that sorted first. And so I think we could likely have a job description back in a couple of weeks' time. We can work on that and get it back on the court's agenda to look at it. And then obviously we'd need to have a discussion with the employee and with the union about that as well. So that would, those could happen simultaneously. And then based on that, I mean, we could do it in a number of ways. Once that's approved, in terms of when you would like to start that could start July 1, or it could start prior to that if we're able to get everything in place and approved, and the union is comfortable with where we're headed.
And that discussion then with the union and the employee would also include the salary range. So that's something that would need to be discussed before budget and included in our budget. So, you know, if we go forward with this, then July 1 would make sense.
Yeah, it probably makes the most sense in terms of implementation. For the upcoming budget, that current position is budgeted at her current rate as a full-time, position. So there's money in the budget to pay her. So what we would be looking at in terms of setting the salary schedule is when the salary schedule comes to us, which will probably happen here in early June, we would be setting the rates for that new position at that point. We'd also be setting the rate for the transportation director position too, because that was a position that we just created, and that will be effective July 1. Okay. So, and then I see in the comments, Peter is asking if we take comments or questions, and yes, go ahead, Peter, jump in. But you're muted. Oh, you're still muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Of course.
So I did have a couple of comments. We've been, as the port manager, I've also have the title of Economic Development Officer. And, I came to the county 9 years ago. I have a master's degree in economic development from Purdue University. Studied, how manufacturings locate in communities. It's a big piece of my thesis. I have a bachelor's degree in ag economics from Virginia Tech. I managed a company that had 5 divisions. I was a CEO, family-run business, and guided it through the Great Recession, 08, 09. And before that, I did ag development in a county in Virginia, big county not too far from DC, 3 counties down from DC, and help set up a lot of policies for them, land use policies, this kind of thing, as well as help them develop a local food system. So we come at economic development, we come at it with a lot of tools and background and resources. And our role, and Judge, you're absolutely correct, it is not a formal policy between the county court and the port. It's been a loose policy. It's been a cooperative policy, a collaborative policy, and one that we jointly work on, because many times we develop leads and we've taken the position that we don't care where somebody lands in Gilliam County as long as they land in the county. And so we develop a lot of leads, and it may be the best place for a lead to land would be at Shuttler Station. And so, of course, we call the commissioner that's charged with Shuttler Station and work that project and work that lead. And we've been from one end of the county to the other. We've did a big asbestos abatement project at the Condon radar base. We worked with a lot of small businesses on Condon's Main Street. When we came here, it was a real problem because the hotel would be open and their clientele had no place to eat in town. So we worked with all the different restaurants and made sure that every meal of the day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 7 days a week, was served by the restaurants, and helped organize that. It's a good symbiotic relation between the hotels and the restaurants and keeping people up. But always the county would end up projects that were above the budget that we had to work with. The county would step in and bring, if more funding was needed, we bring it to you. So yes, you would operate as the final say so, because the county does have substantial funding for economic development. The and as we move along with the city of Arlington, we've worked with them on developing the Arlington Mesa Industrial Park. Most of the land up there actually belongs to the city of Arlington. The port has a small piece of land in there, 30 acres, but most all of that was the city of Arlington, and we've helped them. The port took on the project of becoming certified for Oregon as a certified shovel-ready site for that whole parcel. It's a big project. We have a binder that's probably that thick of papers on that to develop that out. At Shuttler Station, we pulled in with Judge Schaefer. I organized getting UP, Watco, the waste management people all together in a room to figure out how we could more efficiently station up the cars, the trains. There, we were using the Shuttler Station siding, but the train operators had wanted a crossover switched, and that's when we collaborated on building that long siding that's there now that allows waste management to virtually double their volume at Shuttler Station. So these are the kind of tools and resources and programs that we help bring to the county, and it has always been in a collaborative way that we have worked together. You know, here at the port, we've done things, of course, but always we use county funding to leverage up. And as I report every year to the county court, it's almost for every dollar that we've gotten in for projects, we've gotten grant dollars. And so we've always leveraged, and it's never cost the county any administrative costs. So all the county economic dollars actually went to projects, either as a grant funding or that we could go out and, or grant matches that we could leverage out, or in the case, for example, the in situ building, the county provided some funding, and every month to this day, we send the county $1,200 in a rent check. So we've done it a lot of different ways, but the county clearly has funding for economic development that is not has not been dedicated per se to economic development. You get almost $1 million now from the waste management tipping fees. It's supposed to be earmarked for economic development. And then the other piece, and I put it in our grant application, there's quite a bit of funding that the port would normally get in its tax base if the SIP funding wasn't there, that we also haven't been getting. And in a sense, you've kind of been, you know, we'd always try to get your support on projects that we wanted to take on at the county level, but that $200,000-300,000 is really the base or tax base that we should be getting in the normal SIP package. If you ever want some more robust discussion about how that SIP works, I'd be glad to share it with you. But so there's another funding that would normally come to the port, $200,000-300,000 a year for our general activity. So I just wanted to give you all kind of a background of where I've come from. We're here to support you, and we get out and we do work a lot of projects, and some of these projects are big, you know, and we need the financial support that the county has been stockpiling as a result of not really using that $200,000-300,000 that should be coming to the port, plus another $1 million from the tipping fees for economic development. You've been stockpiling those funds, and to get in the projects that come here, they need some scale if they're going to be able to export material out of our area and be successful. So that's just my comments. Wanted to give you some background. I know some of you may not be familiar with the tools that we bring to economic development, but I just wanted to share that with you. And you know, again, just to reiterate, we're here to help and support what you guys are doing, to cooperate and collaborate with you on economic development opportunities. And there are some really good opportunities here, and they're still to come. I know this COVID thing has kind of backed us up a little bit, but there's starting to be light at the end of the tunnel. So with that, I'll just leave it to you, Judge and Commissioners Weatherall and Wilkins.
Thanks, Peter. Any other comments or questions while we're at a pause? For folks who are on the phone, if you want to talk, you just have to push *6 and it'll unmute your phone. Anybody else have a comment or question they'd like to share, feedback with to the court about this general idea?
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and identify yourself, please.
Hi, this is Ann Mitchell. I'm not a resident of Gilliam County, but I am in Wheeler County, and I work very closely with your community development staff on projects that we do collaboratively and regionally with tourism. And I basically have two questions I'd like to kind of have you clarify. Is number one, it's my understanding that the community development staff person has been furloughed during this time when it seems that a lot of community development work is important. But the question is, with this new structure, would that person still be working regionally with tourism as before? Thank you.
That's a good question. I think that would be something that we would need to discuss once we have a potential job description in front of us. So I don't know, I guess, is the answer that we would have, that I would have at this point.
Yeah, I guess maybe clarifying is there still a role? Are you foreseeing that the county would still play a role in participating collaboratively with the John Day River Territory on tourism as a very important part of community and economic development?
Again, potentially. I don't think we've worked that out at this point, what the role would be. At this point, I'm just trying to get a general sense from the commissioners on if this is even a direction they want to go in. So that would sort of be getting ahead of ourselves in terms of what the community or the development role would look like. Because if the commissioners tell me this isn't the direction they want to go in, then nothing would change, basically.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Ann. So commissioners, maybe this is a good time just to ask what's your feedback on am I close to what you guys would like? Do I need to come back with a different suggestion, or what are you guys thinking?
Commissioner Weatherall, do you have thoughts?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. This is a lot. So, of course, I was scribbling a bunch of notes earlier, and now I'm trying to go back and find where I was scribbling one of my earlier questions. I'm guessing by the change in the title, the job title, it would be there would be a pay difference between the old position and this proposed new position.
Potentially. I mean, that's going to also depend on the details of the job description that we come up with. So basically how this would work is we would develop the job description based on, what we think we're going to need in order to support these activities. And then based on that, Lisa would be looking then at those essential functions and going out and finding salary comparables, basically, so that we would dial in the range then. So we wouldn't set the salaries first, if that makes sense. We need to define what the position actually is before we can go through the process of figuring out what compensation would be for that position.
Are we thinking this position would still be full-time?
I don't know. That would be something that we would need to talk about further.
Can I just step in here, Judge? I'd just like us to focus on what I think the judge is trying to get to is the high-level plan. Of course, there's going to be a lot of specifics to iron out when you have an agreement of how you'd like to move forward. But I want to be also cautious and sensitive to the fact we are talking about an existing employee who's currently on furlough. We don't have the details mapped out as yet as to exactly what the position could, would, should, or should not look like. So I just want to be respectful to the fact that we need to have those conversations with the employee before we start more openly sharing in an open public forum, a conversation we've not yet had opportunity to have with the employee.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm used to being in other positions that I've had, and you go right to the details. So
Not a problem.
okay. I'll try to look big picture.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Sherry, what do you think so far?
I'd just like to see us move forward with this. Thank you.
I received an email from a citizen earlier about this topic, and they had some concerns about the county, I guess, taking on the role of economic development. And he had brought up some points about ports and that maybe that's a role that that ports in the past have played. And so I just wanted to mention that. I'm not sure, this is new for me, so it's going to take me a little bit to have some time to think about it. I want to say that because that was a citizen that I did hear from just this morning that was concerned about what our role is, what the county port's role is as well. But I do also know that in the past that the judge has been very involved and it's made sense.
Yeah, it's hard when, I think Peter brought up this point is that, the county is typically the funder of these projects. So you really can't have the county involved in terms of providing funding for a project without having the county judge at the table typically. That's not how it's typically structured. I know from experience now, even just being here just over a year, is that anytime somebody has a good idea in the county and it's going to require some funding, it's me that typically will get the call to be at that table, even without even looking at this formalizing sort of a structure. That's happening naturally because I'm sort of the gateway to get it on to the court's agenda, really, I think. So, and historically, that's what we've seen, right? The two more significant initiatives that we've had related to economic development have been fiber and housing, and both of those have been funded by previous county courts. Those were initiatives that were driven by my predecessor, by Judge Schaefer, was really, he was part of that role in the previous county courts. I see Commissioner or former Commissioner Weimer on here. I would argue that they played a huge role in those two things, which were huge economic development tools for both communities. So, just looking at even previous recent examples, and you talk to the city, I don't know if you guys have sat through their goal setting before, but I try to go every year. And those are still the two big topics that they're pushing for, right? Is economic development is, making sure that people have houses here, because development of business doesn't mean anything for us if people can't live here. You know, if they're living in Morrow County and sending their kids to Morrow County and their spouse is working in Morrow County, then basically we've created a tax base for Morrow County, but not much for the community fabric that we're trying to do here. And so, I mean, I think that's probably what precipitated the letter from the city to us, was just this recognition that a lot of the things that they're most interested in have already been projects that the county has been a big funder and player in. And so that synergy is, I think, natural for them to want to pursue. So I just thought I would throw that out there. I understand the idea that, you know, maybe the port has some more legal leeway than the governing body of the county does. But I think if you look historically, the county courts have always played, you know, you look at our two biggest industries right now, and really the ones that keep us afloat so that we do have money to be able to invest is waste management and our windmills. And both of those were things that were recruited here and worked on by previous county courts. So I think you could make a pretty strong argument that the county courts before us have played really significant roles in developing industry here. And that's a natural part of what we should be doing. If we're not looking at the big picture, I'm not sure why we're here, honestly. It's our job to make these communities livable long-term, in my opinion. That's our role. And economic development is part of that. So, other comments or questions from the crowd?
I have another one, Judge.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, and I don't dispute everything that you said. I think one thing that may not be as clear to some people is the amount of time, staff time, that it takes to bring a project up. And that's what community development often is. Just for example, the housing project, you know, members of the court really did not attend those meetings. They attended a couple to set them up, but the hard work was done by the committee, which of course I was a part of, and I helped frame the basic policy, the plan, the structure that made the housing program in the county market-based. Yes, there were some grant pieces in that, but it was fundamentally a market base, and that's where a lot of housing goes astray. Where you build houses, it's not hooked to a market or an entrepreneur. But that's just an example. And of course, Rachel was in on those meetings, or your community development person, and other people. Pioneer clearly was a key player in this, is Kaylin, other people. It's a big group. We brought projects to the county court, for example, at Shuttler Station. We've been working with Waste Management and collaborated on building a rail car repair facility, and we have a building and a project all designed out at Waste Management. But this does take staff time, and it doesn't rise to the court level where you would normally be making a decision until we have the project pretty well cooked and we know what the dollars are and how much funding is required. Clearly, we always keep you abreast and apprised, or that would be the role of the economic development person, of how this project goes. And, you know, we often economic development officer would bring a project to you or say, hey, you know, this is something that's come up. What do you think? Are you in favor of it? And then, but it's the staff time that really gets down into the nitty gritty. And Judge, even though you would be fully capable of doing that with all your other duties, I think you would be very taxed to take on the role of working a lot of projects with all your other duties. So the staffing of this position is going to be really critical to what you want to do.
Thanks, Peter. Other feedback?
Yeah, it's Pat.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah, I just want to comment a little bit because, and I realize the housing is a big deal in our county. Like I had a discussion last night, and there was, I believe, 7 buses that Waste Management's running out of the county with employees right now. But keeping that in mind, as a small business owner in the county and who has worked with previous courts and with the port in establishing the businesses that I've got, it's important to realize that wives of employees in the county don't necessarily want to move to a community that doesn't have a real usable community for all the amenities that they might need. And I think it keeps people away. So you kind of have to tie what your downtown small business side of things look like along with the housing. It's kind of a paired way to look at it, and one without the other doesn't work very well in my opinion. But I did work when we put the pheasant together. I was on the phone for probably 2 weeks with Commissioner Gronquist at regular basis, a lot of conversations with the Judge Schaefer at that time. And so there was a lot of work with court. I mean, I believe that's a really important part of it, but especially with the pheasant and actually with both of the restaurant businesses, the port helped me with business plans, a lot of financial information, a lot of stuff that took us a lot of time to put together, projections, and so there was a lot of time spent that I want you to be aware of to really get a business up and going that was really important to me to get started. So I just want to get that out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Any other folks? Well, we've got a little pause here. I want to just scroll down too and make sure somebody didn't use the raise your hand function. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so in terms of next steps, Leslie, it sounds like you may want a little bit more time to think about, or would it be helpful for Lisa and I to get started on kind of mapping out what those job descriptions would look like? Or what are you thinking for next steps?
I am thinking that this is just a lot to take in. This is a lot to take in for me. And I know that there are a lot of citizens out there that may want to weigh in one way or another. And I would like a little bit of a chance to talk to people and think about it a little bit.
Okay. All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and encourage folks who are listening in that if you have additional thoughts or things that you want to raise with any of the court members, please continue to do so. Obviously, all of our contact information is on the website. You can email us, call us, whatever works best for you. And I think we'll look at maybe bringing this back. I think I'll probably just keep it on the agenda so we can keep it front of mind, and then see if maybe we're ready to make a decision and move forward during the next meeting. Does that work for everybody? Does that work for you, Leslie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's move on to discuss 6.4, discuss COVID-19 reopening plan. So this was a last minute ad, so I apologize for that. There is a reason for this, which is that after we released our agenda on Thursday, the governor asked us to a meeting on Friday where she gave us the list of prerequisites for reopening, beginning of phased reopening of Oregon. So in your packets, and for folks who want to see these online, these are posted on the county's website, but it's basically a 4-page document, 7 prerequisites, which I can go over just really quickly. The main takeaway for me is that most of these are really looking at regional medical capacity in order to be able to reopen. So they're looking at, because we have had 0 cases, we've sort of already cleared some hurdles that they were looking at. So they're looking at decreased cases over time, but as we've had 0, we're not subject to that requirement. But some of the other things they're looking at is testing capacity in the region, surge capacity. So if we had an outbreak here, you know, Mid-Columbia Medical Center's ability to manage our patients plus any other patients that are coming in from the region, since it's really a hub for several counties. So I'll just walk through these really quick. Basically, the first one was a declining prevalence of COVID-19, which only applies to counties that have more than 5 cases. So we're not subject to that. Thank goodness. The second one is a minimum testing regime. We basically have to be able to test at a rate of 30 per 10,000 people. So about per week. So I think that's about 6 tests or something. Our folks, we do have that testing capacity already between Mid-Columbia Medical Center and our local clinics. We do have that sort of testing capacity. We are working on improving it more. One of the things that we heard from is that that it's possible that Wheeler County is going to be getting one of those Abbott testing things, which is like the 5 or 10 minute turnaround, I think, for a confirmation. And so we're going to be reaching out to them and seeing if we may be able to use that for certain, you know, if we had a presumptive case in, say, Summit Springs or something where we needed to rapidly test in order to contain an outbreak, we're going to be reaching out to them and seeing if they may be willing to share that testing capability with us. Same thing for like our 911 center, because obviously we can't afford to have 4 or 5 dispatchers have to be in quarantine for exposure. So those kinds of things we're working on. That is tested, or that is looked at from a regional level. And so the feedback has been that regionally we're where we need to be on testing so far. The third one is contact tracing, and this is the idea that if somebody is confirmed case, this is a function of North Central Public Health District, where they've got people on staff that basically then follow up with that patient and see who has had contact with them, and then do follow-ups with all of those people to advise them that they need to quarantine, that they have come into contact with a confirmed case of COVID. So I spoke with Terry Talifor yesterday, who is the public health director or executive director for North Central Public Health, and she said that they have sufficient contact tracing to meet the state's requirement already built in to public health. So we're where we need to be on those. Isolation facilities, the requirement is that the county has to have an isolation plan in place for individuals who test positive and cannot isolate at home safely. So an example of this might be if you had a family that has, say, a 1-bathroom house, where it's just not possible for people to not be coming in contact with another. What other counties are doing is coordinating with local hotels and motels, since we have a lot of vacancies right now, and basically putting in place agreements where those individuals could self-isolate if they're confirmed cases. And so Gary and Chris Fitz have been working with our local lodging establishments to come up with some plans. And so we have that isolation capability in place already. So Gary and Chris worked on that. The way that will work, and one thing that I could use some feedback from you guys on, one, part of that self-isolation means that you have to be able to accommodate the person's needs while they're in there, right? So they're going to need grocery and potentially pharmaceuticals and, you know, whatever else they need. And so I've spoken with our transportation gals, and they are more than willing to do drops for people. One of the facilities will, if we have this, and I need to emphasize, this would be very rare circumstances, because I think most people, if they contracted COVID, can probably isolate at home. You know, if you've got 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, you can figure out a way to do it. But so in those rare cases where we had somebody that needed to isolate, we've talked to the hotel the Condon Motel, and they've agreed to reserve some rooms for that purpose. And so basically that would allow our transportation gals to just drop something off on the stoop, basically, and not have any contact with that patient. But one of the questions that did come up that I just wanted to run by you is if one of those citizens that needs to self-isolate is unable to pay for their hotel room, the question becomes who pays for that? And so my feeling is that this is part of an emergency and that the county would likely, in the rare instance, I would be surprised if we even have one that needs isolation that we would pay for, that we would feel comfortable just using some of the emergency funding that we're doing to pay for that hotel room. But I wanted to see if you guys have any objections to that.
No, I think that's only the right thing to do.
Okay. So then the next thing is a statewide requirement, which is sector guidelines. So the way this will work is, in essence, once you hit these 7 gateway sort of requirements, you move into a phase 1 reopening, which is basically only certain businesses are allowed to reopen under certain conditions. And so the state is setting what those conditions are, and that's what this sector guidelines is referencing. So they are working on that. That will come to us from the state, and the timeline they have given us is probably later this week. We would see the final versions of those coming out. The other 2 pieces get back again to our regional healthcare capacity, which is sufficient healthcare capacity. This again has to do with surge levels. So if we had a sudden uptick in cases, the hospital just needs to confirm that they've got sufficient capacity to be able to handle those patients. And then the final one is sufficient PPE supply. And so it lays out what the metric is basically, but smaller rural hospitals need to have a 14-day supply and a steady supply chain. They need to have a consistent one. And the larger hospitals need to carry more 30-day. And then we also, as a county, need to certify that our first responders have sufficient PPE. And I've checked in with Chris, and at this point, we look good on that front. We've been getting regular pushes of PPE supplies in. Chris gets she's been getting a box just about every other day for the last couple of weeks. So we've got pretty good supply on most of the things that they need. So that kind of gives you guys an overview. Basically what I'm asking for today, or to give you an idea of sort of next steps, is because a lot of these things are regional considerations, so regional medical capacity. North Central Public Health has basically raised their hand and said, Terry has said, I'm willing to write the plan, basically certifying that we meet all of these things. And so what we're looking at is there's a regional plan that's being developed. There's 1 or 2 pieces that I just noted that were county pieces, the isolation plan and the PPE for our first responders. And so I guess what I'm asking today is for permission or authorization from the court to just allow me, once that regional plan comes together, which I think is probably going to happen in the next week or so, to go ahead and submit the documentation to the governor's office on these other pieces, basically asking for a phase 1 reopening as soon as the regional plan is put together. And the reason I'm asking for the flexibility and not asking for it to come back to the court is that I'm concerned that because we're only meeting every other week and this is moving so quickly, that our businesses could be closed for longer than they need to be, basically. So this would just put it in the queue that as soon as we're ready to go, I can pull the trigger, make the request to the governor's office, and we can get in the queue for phase 1 reopening. Questions about any of this? Nope, none from Sherry. Any from you, Leslie?
I don't have any. We spend a lot of time talking about this at Public Health, so I think what you're proposing is a good idea.
Okay.
So I guess I would move to authorize the county judge to prepare and submit any documentation necessary to request phase 1 reopening status for Gilliam County, in coordination with the submission of a regional reopening plan as outlined in the governor's prerequisites for phased reopening of Oregon plan.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we authorize the county judge to prepare and submit any documentation necessary to request phase 1 reopening status for Gilliam County in coordination with the submission of a regional reopening plan as outlined in the governor's prerequisites for phased reopening of Oregon plan. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are down to just announcements and next meeting. Did you guys have anything you wanted to flag? We haven't really been doing court reports because I wasn't sure how active, we haven't really been able to go to meetings and things, so I wasn't sure if you have anything, but if you've got stuff that you wanted to put on the record.
I am on the City of Arlington Budget Committee, and we will be meeting virtually next Tuesday at 5:30.
Great. Leslie, anything from you?
I don't have anything.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if anybody else has jumped on, but we've got some new folks who have joined us. So I don't know if anybody else wants to just identify that they were here. It's helpful for us to know so we can engage with folks. But
hi, Liz. This is Kaylin.
Hey, Kaylin. Where are you calling from? Which number are you?
I'm on 208-908-9389.
Perfect. Other than that, since Kaylin's on, that reminded me, one of the things I think we can expect to see from the chamber here in the next meeting is possibly looking at any remaining grant funds for the original $150,000 that we asked the chamber to disperse in order to be able to provide some flexibility to meet some reopening needs that businesses are starting to identify for her. So I wanted to flag that will probably be coming back on our next agenda to look at maybe giving a little bit more flexibility in how those funds are granted. Just because as we're transitioning into reopening, there's some new needs that are starting to pop up that I think we could sort of help for businesses that need to restock or put in place protective, safety things that are required by the governor's office, those kinds of things. So wanted to flag that for you. And I know Kaylin's also doing a lot of one-on-one work and seminar kinds of things with our businesses, just trying to get them prepared for that reopening. So Kaylin, did you want to mention your event that you're doing next week on the 14th?
Yes, absolutely. So if everyone can save the date for May 14th from 1 to 3:30 p.m., we'll be hosting a business adaptation training for all sectors, from outdoor recreation, retail, childcare, personal care services, and we'd like everyone to join us. The first hour of the program is going to be led by the health department. The second hour will break into individual segments. So businesses can align, all be part of the same conversation, and then network together with what other businesses are doing to creatively find ways to reopen. It's going to be a wonderful, long set of meetings, and then from that, I imagine we'll, break into even smaller sectors where we can get, like river rafters together and restaurants, with 6 tables or less. That way we can really find businesses that can connect with one another.
Great. And Kaylin, I just have to say, for on the record, has been doing phenomenal work with our businesses and engaging on the regional level. I think she's just really shown some fantastic leadership and been a real steady voice for people when they needed it. So good job, Kaylin.
Well, thank you for all the support of the county court and also the community businesses and members. So together we'll get through this.
Yeah. So other than that, in terms of announcements, folks may have noticed that our meeting for next, in 2 weeks, seems to be one day off. It's on May 19th, and that is because we, in order to accommodate our budget committee members' schedules, are moving the budget committee hearing, the first one, to May 19th. So unless the commissioners have any objection, I was planning on just having both of those meetings the same day so that you guys don't have to block out 2 separate mornings to do those. Does that work for you guys to do the 19th?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that will be our next regular meeting. We'll also, I'm assuming we are still going to be probably doing this via video conference on the 19th, but we'll keep you posted on if anything changes. The budget committee hearing, the first one is, I think we're planning on having that be via Zoom. So we'll get that, all of that information obviously noticed appropriately in the paper and posted on the website and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to give folks a heads up that we're probably going to have to do at least the first budget hearing to keep things on track over video conference. Other than that, I think that's all I've got. Anything else, ladies? All right, thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.